All right, let's talk some golf and bring on Steve Sands, play-by-play voice and lead interviewer for NBC and the Golf Channel. It's Open Championship week. We know you're a busy man over there, so thanks for giving us some time, Steve.
My pleasure, anytime.
We mentioned the Open Championship. Talk to us. Let's start there for right now. Talk to us about some of the storylines. What's the feel over there as this tournament goes about to go on?
Oh, it's such a cool week in golf. It's so different than everything else. I was thinking about it the other day with Wimbledon and Novak and Carlos going at it 1 and 2. And golf's majors are like tennis's majors. They all have their own feel to it. And the Open Championship is just completely different than the other three. The weather is a massive factor. It's links golf. It doesn't look the same for the American audience on television. Doesn't feel the same for the guys who are playing this week. And if you look at Rory winning last week, if you look at all the things that are going on with the defending champion and Cam Smith and the LIV and the PGA Tour thing, and coming back to Liverpool the last 2 times, it was McIlroy and Tiger Woods. There are so many things to look forward to this week. I just can't wait for it.
You mentioned Rory. Rory has gone quite a while without winning a major. With him winning last week, what is the sense over there? What is the excitement level over there about Rory potentially getting his next major?
A lot. He is so popular no matter where you go. But when you're over here, I don't know if you guys remember last year walking at St. Andrews, the whole world was rooting for Rory McIlroy a year ago, and they're going to be doing that again. They think of him as one of their own here. The United Kingdom stretches into Northern Ireland, which is where he's from. And he's just such a good guy, and everybody, loves being around him, loves talking to him, those kinds of things. Love rooting for him. For him to win last week was big. He hasn't won a major in 9 years. All right. So if you think about 9 years going by, the last time he won a major championship was Valhalla, the PGA Championship. That was when it was played in August. He won the week before at Bridgestone in Akron. That's the last time anybody won a PGA Tour event and then won a major the following week. So for him to win last week, he is completely aware of that exact statistic. So I think it bodes well for Rory coming into this week.
Steve, we remember Rory from young Rory. Rory has become mature in ways I don't know if anybody expected. He's become not just this great golfer, but he has become the voice or even the conscience of the game. What is it about Rory that has led him to now?
Well, he's a bright guy. He's intuitive. He's inquisitive. He reads a lot. You could talk to Rory. One of the things I enjoy about Rory so much is you could talk to him about golf all day. But you could also talk to him about politics and talk to him about life and talk to him about fatherhood and talk to him about marriage and talk to him about what it was like growing up in Northern Ireland. He can tell you about the history of all the things the Catholics and the Protestants and all the things that have, he's basically seen his whole life. He's not just a golfer. Normally when you're around athletes, and this is a good thing, to be an elite athlete, to be a great professional athlete, there's got to be a lot of, selfishness inside you. But that doesn't mean you need to be a selfish person. And he certainly is not. And he's just grown up and become a wonderful young man. He's well-rounded. I remember him telling me years ago, I want to be the best player in the world, and I want to be the best player in the history of the sport, but not at the expense of being abnormal to a point and being, so selfish that I don't have anything else in my life other than golf. And perhaps that's going to prevent him, from winning, gajillions of majors, like Tiger and like Jack did, all those years ago. But he can live with that as long as he, maintains his true self. He's trying to find that balance between being the voice and the conscience, like you said, of the game, the face of this whole PGA Tour versus LIV situation, but also playing high-level golf. He may have lost his way there for a little bit on the golf course because he had so many things going on off it, and I think he kind of recognized that, and I think he's back to playing more golf like Rory used to and like he wants to, as opposed to just being a spokesperson for all the things that are going on in the game.
Despite the fact that he is really the face of the PGA, I was surprised to learn that Tiger and Rory didn't really have a heads up on the merger. We've seen some time now go by. We've seen some reactions from people, some resignations from people. Do we have any more idea what this is all going to look like and how people are feeling about it almost a month later now?
Well, I think that most of the guys will tell you that they're frustrated because they don't know. The answer is no. Nobody really knows because, most high-level mergers, high-level transactions in business, and this is more business than it is golf. People like us aren't going to know about it. Nobody's going to know about it because very few people can know about those kinds of things so that they can put the deal together. And I think that framework is coming together. I think there's back and forth. There was a little bit of news the other day that to appease the DOJ, the Department of Justice, both sides have agreed that you can go back and forth. You cannot be exclusive from one tour to the next because that would have been an antitrust situation with the Department of Justice. But I think Rory, Tiger, all down the line, there's a frustration level not knowing what the next step is, and maybe even more so not knowing what the next step is, but not being able to know, not being allowed to be privy to that type of information. The guys aren't used to that. People need to remember that golf is different in America than the 4 team sports. If this is Roger Goodell, Manfred, Adam Silver, Gary Bettman, there's a players union and there's the other side of the table is the owners. The commissioners work for the owners and they go against the players and the union. In this case, the players own the tour. So Jay Monahan works for the players. He doesn't work for an owner. There's no owners in golf, not on the PGA Tour. So the players are frustrated by the fact that they just don't know what's going on. And the reason they don't know what's going on is because they can't all know what's going on because you can't have everybody knowing everything when you're doing a deal of this magnitude.
Yeah, but what they could do is there was an advisory board, and it doesn't even seem like that board was particularly in the know about what was going on.
Oh, believe me, I know. I mean, there's a high level of frustration, man. You should hear some of the stuff we hear talking to the guys off camera. Forget being on camera, but off camera is the best conversations you'll ever have anyway. You guys know that in sports. And it's very, very frustrating that the players have a seat at the table and didn't know. And that's a problem with Jay Monahan and the commissioner, the commissioner's office right now on the PGA Tour. There's a problem because the players have lost a little bit of trust in their commissioner. Again, if this is the NFL per se, okay, and the NFL union is arguing in a collective bargaining situation with the owners, they're going against each other. That's the way it works in team sports. In this particular sport in America on the PGA Tour, the players sit at the table when the decisions are made, not against the tour, but with the tour. And in this particular case, with this entire LIV situation, having not known anything, you already saw Randall Stevenson, former chairman and CEO of AT&T, quit the board, the policy board. Well, I think players are contemplating not wanting to be a part of the policy board and also, being involved in those types of decisions because they weren't involved in the biggest one of all the decisions, and that's this thing. So it's a very frustrating time, very tenuous time for Jay Monahan and as commissioner, and it's a very tenuous time for the players who want to be a part of the process and be on that policy board, but also they want some transparency, and they're not receiving that right now.
Yeah, from my perspective, the fracture between the leadership as far as the non-golfers and the golfers is troubling enough. To me, the bigger concern is the fracture between players themselves. Greg Norman and his group have basically caused this fracture within this fraternity. And now the uncertainty of knowing what's happening next, whether people could go play on one tour or the other tour, all of those things, I think, at least from the outside looking in, seems to be creating an unnecessary fracture amongst the players themselves. What do you see as you're there every day?
Yeah, I agree with you. But then on the other side, it's a tough one, and here's why. So you're familiar with the name Jimmy Dunn. So Jimmy Dunn's a very successful businessman, and he's been on the policy board. He basically is the person who brokered the deal with LIV, with a couple of other people, but he basically was the face and the voice of it. He's a business guy. There's a little bit of thought that says, hey, guys, you go play. We'll handle the tour business. You guys play. We'll take care of the tournaments, and we'll take care of the league, quote unquote. We'll take care of those types of things. But that's not how this is structured. It's different than the other sports. The way this is structured is that the players don't just play. They own their own tour, and they have a seat at the table. There are 9 places at the table on the board, and 5 of them are players. And for them to be in the majority on the board but not know anything about what just took place business-wise is kind of contrary to the concept of having players on that board. So it's a very tricky situation. I agree, and I think you guys would too, and I think most people who have a brain would agree that, is this a little bit above the heads of professional golfers? They're golfers. They're not business people. They're not people who do mergers and acquisitions. They're not people who deal with billion-dollar deals, billion-dollar business decisions on a daily basis, like some of the people who are on the board. Everybody agrees with that. But if you're going to have the structure that's in place that has players on the board and they don't know a thing about what the board is doing, well, then you're going to have a problem. And that's where we stand right now.
Separate from the business side of it, the golf side of it, golf's a tradition-based sport. These are two very different looking leagues. What's golf going to look like going forward? I can't see the PGA looking like Happy Gilmore on a Sunday after 3 rounds of golf with people screaming and guzzling beer.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, except in Arizona.
Yeah, but that's planned.
That's encouraged there. That's right. That's something everybody loves there. That's about as fun a week as you'll ever have in golf. Look, I think the way it'll all shake out, and I have no idea. If I had an idea, I would tell you. I really don't. There's no way in the world the PGA Tour is going to look like LIV. I don't know if you guys have watched LIV, but there's no way in the world that it's going to look like that. I think that it is tradition-based. And, look, just like every other sport, the game is much quicker. The athletes are amazing now. You're not moving the base paths. You're not moving the rubber back. It's still 60 feet, 6 inches. You're not going to raise the rim to 11 feet instead of 10 and widen the court and lengthen the court. It's still going to be 94 feet long, even though the guys are bigger, stronger, faster, and better athletes than they were 50 years ago. And I don't think golf's going to change. Golf's going to be 18 holes. It's going to be 72 holes. There's going to be a cut. There's going to be some events that don't have cuts, but there's always been events that don't have cuts on the PGA Tour. I don't think people are going to be walking around in shorts. I don't think people are going to be listening to rock and roll and rap music during rounds. I don't think there's going to be a team golf concept on the PGA Tour. I just don't see how you can do that business-wise. But I do think they're going to implement a certain number of things. And I also think that perhaps, I don't know this, that there'll be like a series of events that are LIV-like, say in the fall, after the FedEx Cup has won in Atlanta at the Tour Championship. But do I think the game is going to look completely different once these two tours come together? I don't think it's going to look that much different. I just think there's going to be a couple of changes, but it will not be completely overhauled. There's no way that the tradition of the sport and the tradition of the PGA Tour, and by the way, the PGA Tour brand, I don't think they're going to allow it to just be goofy. I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I can't see that. You're somebody who's seen so much since you started at the Golf Channel in 2001. I wanted to ask, you get to be there a lot for those interviews after the tournament ends. We always see the excitement, and those interviews are amazing. How challenging is it for you as an interviewer when you put the microphone of somebody in somebody's face who loses a tournament right afterwards?
It's to me, it's the most challenging part of the job. if you're the interviewer, it's like anywhere else in life. Everybody, is great, when everything's going well. I mean, that's easy. Not easy, but you know what I mean? It's just a lot easier to deal with things when everything's going smoothly. To me, the challenge of interviewing an athlete when he or she has just lost, or he or she has just been disappointed, or has done something bad on the golf course or whatever the sport is, that's when you know if you can do it or not. And I think there's an art to asking a question that's difficult in a congenial manner. And I think one of the advantages we have on television is we get to look at the athlete. They can see us when we're asking the question. So we're not just in a big room of writers and they're just belting out questions. We're one-on-one, standing right next to the golfer. And if he or she has just lost, they can see on our face as we're asking the question that, we almost feel, there's a compassionate element to it. Let's put it that way. And to me, dealing with athletes when they've lost or have been just disappointed, and we're the first ones to get them on television because we're not partners. We pay to show these events. So we get them first. There's a huge advantage to that. It's immediate, so you get the emotions right away, good or bad. But when it's a bad situation or someone is just lost or disappointed, it's a very difficult thing to speak to that person and to show some compassion. But you have to. And you have to ask a tough question, but you don't have to be a jerk when you ask a tough question. An athlete knows, an interviewer, a play-by-play guy, or whoever in our position is earning their stripes when they can handle a negative situation. Again, you'll learn a lot about yourself in adverse situations. We're all, happy-go-lucky when things are going well. When things aren't going well, that makes it more difficult. And for us in a position to speak to them first on the air, live on television for the world to see, that can be a very difficult thing. But it's also gratifying to know that when you do it and you do it right, and hopefully you do it right, that the athlete appreciates it.
Look, Steve, you do it right. But I got to ask you a personal question. 1990, you started out as an intern at CNN Sports. Did you ever see the day would come? And how did you get from there to the Olympics and now standing on a course for the Open?
He interviewed Michael Jordan at the Ryder Cup a few years ago. I don't know if you saw that when he was at CNN.
You know what? It's funny. When I was growing up in D.C., I'm a D.C. guy, big Skins fan, Commanders fan. When I realized that I wasn't going to be the next great Art Monk, for the Skins, which I found out early in life, I just wanted to get involved in sports. And I had a professor where I went to school at Colorado State named Fred Shook, who said, yeah, you got to try this. I said, okay. So I tried it. As far as sports writing, he calls me in. I wasn't thinking about TV or radio or anything like that. I just wanted to be the next Tony Kornheiser or Michael Wilbon writing for the Washington Post. And he calls me in about 4 or 5 months, into my sophomore year and says, you're a lousy writer. I said, oh, man. I said, you're right. I knew he was right. I knew I couldn't do it. And he goes, but I do think, these are his words, not mine. He goes, I like the way you sound and the way you kind of are, your demeanor. I think you'd be really good doing play-by-play or talking to athletes or whatever it is, sportscasting on television. I started laughing. I said, why television? He goes, because I think that's the route you ought to take. He goes, that's all you care about is sports, whether it's writing or talking about it, just do that. And I said, okay. So I gave it a shot. I was doing something in Fort Collins, Colorado at a TV station there. And I remember thinking, wow, can you get paid to go to games and do play-by-play or talk to the athletes, whatever it is. So then I applied for this job at CNN Sports, which back then used to rival SportsCenter. They don't even have a sports department anymore. But back then it was back and forth between the two. Basically, CNN Sports ended when the NFL went to ESPN in 1989. That was pretty much the end of CNN Sports. But I was there in 1990, and I was around it every day, all day and night in the summer of 1990. And I thought, wow, I can't imagine having a real job as opposed to just doing this. This would not be work to me. And here we are 33 years later, from Scottsbluff, Nebraska, my first job, to Oak Hill, West Virginia, to Martinsburg, West Virginia, to Utica, New York, to Richmond, Virginia, to Orlando, to the Golf Channel, to NBC. It's been a magical ride. I've been very, very, very lucky Very, very lucky to find something I love. I've been very, very lucky to get some of these jobs that I've gotten over the years, and let's hope it continues for a few more. I'm only 54, man. We gotta pump out a few more years here.
Yeah, we got to keep it going. You've been in some amazing atmospheres, covering the Olympics. You've talked about the energy being unmatched. Jeff and I are big fans of the Ryder Cup. Talk about just the atmosphere and emotion when you're playing for your country or when you're playing for a team as opposed to the individual sport that you cover more regularly.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing. Ryder Cup, President's Cup in golf, Olympics for the other sports. When you put on the uniform or the jersey or whatever it is, and it's the red, white, and blue, as opposed to whatever your team is, or in this sport in golf, whatever your sponsor is. Having done all sports, having a play-by-play and talking to athletes over the 30, 40 years to 33 years in all sports, in this sport in particular, the Ryder Cup is so huge. It could be considered an exhibition because it really doesn't matter on your resume. In other words, we all know Tiger Woods has won 82 times and 15 majors. We know that Jack is 73 and 18. I have no idea what their Ryder Cup record is. But when they play, nobody knows what their Ryder Cup record is. But that particular week, those 3 days, it is so thrilling. It's it's so incredibly loud. It's sports loud, not golf loud. And that's because the country's behind you, or in Europe's case, the continent is behind you, or in the President's Cup case, it's the United States versus everyone else in the world other than Europe, the international side. And it's the fans rally, and they get them all jacked up, and the energy is incredible. And if you take that to an Olympic level, when I do speed skating in the Winter Games, I've done a bunch of different things, curling and speed skating and all these other different sports in the winter and summer. But no matter what the venue is, no matter what the sport is, when those flags are going crazy and the people are dressed up and they're rooting for their country, and it's just an energy that you can't imagine. And I remember talking to professionals about it, professional athletes, what's it going to be like, to be at the Olympics? And they would all the guys who I've met over the years kept telling me there's nothing like it. And it sure is. It's an amazing experience. I was talking last week at the American Century Championship in Tahoe before coming here to the Open to John Elway. And Elway has been to one Ryder Cup in his life. It was at Brookline, the Ben Crenshaw. I've got a feeling 1999 Brookline when the United States was down 10-6. He's going to the Ryder Cup this year with Michael Jordan in Rome. He has never been to a Ryder Cup internationally. And he was asking me, what's it going to be like? The only one he's ever been to was in Boston, outside Boston at Brookline in 1999. And I told him it is literally going to be like Mile High Stadium for the entire 60 minutes in an AFC Championship game. And the place is going to be going nuts the entire time for 3 straight days. And this is a guy who's won 2 Super Bowls, one of the great players in the history of the sport, Hall of Fame. The whole thing's done everything. And he is so jacked to go because he knows what that feeling is like. We only know it from the outside. We're there, we're inside the ropes, or we're in the booth calling it, whatever it is, but we're not competing. We don't know what that's like to receive that type of adulation and also get booed, and get jeered and those kinds of things. And it's just going to be awesome. It's going to be so cool in Rome. And the Ryder Cup is like the Olympics. There's just an energy to it that's unlike anything in golf.
All right. Before we let you go, we do have to ask for a prediction. And when you give the prediction, we also have to say when you're celebrating, since your family owns a winery, Calvert Woodley Wines and Spirits, what wine would be paired best with an Open Championship as well as a cheese?
Well, I'll give you a humble brag. I have had a few sips of liquid from the claret jug over the years, from some of the guys who were, let's put it this way, fun enough and also gracious enough to allow other people into their lives. I am a sportscaster. I couldn't tell you one thing about wine. My brother Michael owns the store now. My father owned it for years. And if I was trying, I don't need to anymore because I've been married forever. But if I needed to impress somebody with a bottle of wine, I would quickly call or text Michael. So I have no idea. I would put, if I'm in a celebratory mood, I would not put wine in the claret jug first. I would put champagne in it and just drink out of it, like the Stanley Cup or, the claret jug, that kind of thing. It's the most coveted trophy in all of golf, maybe in all of sports outside of the Stanley Cup. So I would probably throw some champagne in there to celebrate first. And I think the person who's going to be sipping champagne, man, you guys put me on the spot. You know what? I'm a sports romantic. I think Rory breaks the streak. I think that he has given so much to the game in the last 18 months, and it's made his golf perhaps suffer a little bit. And I think that he comes back this week to Liverpool, where he won his only Open in 2014. He hasn't won one in 9 years, a major championship at all. I like that he won last week. Normally I wouldn't. I don't like it when someone wins the week before a major. But last week was different, and I think Rory makes it different. And I think if it's not – here's the thing. If it's not windy, I think Rory's going to win. Rory's not a great wind player. He is a great player when the course is soft, and the course is going to be soft because it's been raining forever, and it's supposed to rain all week. So I'm going to go with McIlroy to break the streak, get to 5 to match Brooks Koepka, who won 5 majors with that win at the PGA a few weeks ago at Oak Hill. So let's go with McIlroy, and let's go with champagne first out of the claret jug before he puts any wine in there.
Look, it was very windy. I watched his hat get blown off. You must have been almost blown away out there with everything going on there. Steve, we can't thank you enough for the time. This has been a blast. Enjoy your week there. We hope we get some time with you again.
Anytime. My pleasure, fellas.